Ladies and gentlemen, let me share something with you today. Everyone's looking for a shortcut, a hack, a secret, that magic key that unlocks success without the sweat. But here's the truth: the work is the shortcut. See, life has a way of testing us. It whispers, do you really want it? Or do you just want to talk about it? And the only honest answer you can give is your effort, not your intention, not your wish list, not your excuses, your effort. People say, but the work takes too long. Let me ask you, compared to what? Compared to drifting another year? Compared to watching someone else build the life you could have had? Compared to the regret of knowing you never tried? Believe me, doing the work is still the faster path. Think about if you plant a seed today, you don't get a tree tomorrow. But if you don't plant it at all, you'll never get a tree. Work is the planting. Work is the watering. And one day work becomes the shade you sit under. Now, let's be clear. The work isn't glamorous. Most of the time, it's ordinary, repetitive, unexciting. But here's the paradox: it's in the ordinary that the extraordinary is created. The hours of practice no one applauds. The discipline no one sees. The sacrifices no one thanks you for. That's where the shortcut hides. Some people wait for motivation. But motivation is overrated. Discipline is what moves mountains. Motivation asks, do I feel like it today? Discipline says, I'm doing it anyway. And that's the person who arrives first. So if you want a shortcut, stop looking for one. Start being one. Be the person who does the work when others look for the way around it. Be the person who embraces the grind while others avoid it. And one day they'll ask you, how did you get here so fast? And you'll smile and say, the work was the shortcut. Effort is the evidence. When you look at a person's life, you don't need to hear what they believe. You don't need a list of their dreams. And you don't need them to explain how much they want something. All you need to see is what they are doing day after day. Effort tells the truth. Words can be decorated. Wishes can be inflated, but effort is unfiltered, raw, and undeniable. It speaks louder than promises and cuts through excuses. If you want to know who someone really is, watch what they do, not what they say. There's a reason effort matters so much. It's because life doesn't reward intentions, it rewards execution. A man can talk about building a business for 10 years, while another man actually spends those same years waking up early, making calls, studying, failing, trying again, and adapting. 10 years later, the one who worked will be living his dream, while the one who only talked will still be explaining why he hasn't started. The difference isn't intelligence or luck or circumstance. It's effort. Every seed in the ground has the potential to become a tree, but only the one that is watered and cared for actually grows. The farmer's effort is the evidence of his belief in the harvest. In the same way, your daily actions reveal whether you are serious about your goals. You can say you believe in health, but the effort you give to your exercise and nutrition will expose the truth. You can say you believe in wealth, but your effort to learn, save, and invest is what proves it. You can say you believe in love, but the effort you put into your relationships is the real measure. The human mind is very good at writing stories. It will convince you that wanting something is enough. It will whisper that because you've been thinking about it for years, somehow you've made progress. But thoughts are invisible. They leave no trail, no result, no evidence. Effort leaves footprints. It leaves marks on your calendar. It shows up in your bank account, in your skill set, in your health, in your relationships. Effort leaves a paper trail that nobody can deny. When you look at history, every person who left behind a legacy left it through effort. Great speeches that moved nations weren't written in one attempt. They were drafted, edited, rewritten, and practiced. Great athletes didn't rise to fame by talent alone. Their sweat became the evidence of their pursuit. Great businesses weren't built on vision statements. They were built on long hours, tough decisions, and consistent execution. The vision may inspire, but the effort makes it real. Now, effort is often misunderstood. People think of it only as hard labor, as grinding endlessly, as pushing until you collapse. But effort is not about exhaustion. It is about proof. Proof that you value what you say you value. If you claim something is important to you, your effort will match it. If it doesn't, the truth is that it isn't important enough yet. People can argue with your words, but they can never argue with your evidence. Effort is also a mirror. It reflects back to you where your priorities actually are. You may say family is the most important thing, but if you spend more time scrolling on your phone than being present with them, your effort tells the real story. You may say financial independence is your dream, but if you spend more than you earn every month, your effort exposes the contradiction. You may say you want to master a skill, but if you only practice when you feel like it, your effort tells us you prefer comfort over mastery. The mirror does not lie. Here's the beauty of effort. It doesn't need to be perfect to count. It just needs to be consistent. You don't have to run a marathon on day one. You just have to lace up your shoes and start moving. You don't need to write the book in one sitting. You just need to write a paragraph today and another tomorrow. Small effort, stacked over time, becomes undeniable evidence. The mountain is climbed one step at a time, and each step is a receipt that says, I showed up. Effort has another unique quality. It compounds. 1 hour of practice today may not change much, but 100 hours strung together turns a beginner into someone competent, and 1,000 hours turns competence into mastery. Each drop of effort adds to the bucket until it overflows. This is why effort is so powerful. It doesn't just show the world you're serious, it changes you in the process. With every repetition, you grow. With every consistent action, you transform. There's a temptation to wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect conditions before beginning. But effort doesn't wait. Effort creates conditions as it goes. The first step might be awkward. The first attempt might be messy. The first effort might look unimpressive, but it is still evidence. Evidence that you started while others stayed waiting. Think of a courtroom. Evidence wins cases. The lawyer can argue, persuade, and tell stories, but at the end of the day, what convinces the jury is evidence. The fingerprints, the documents, the witnesses. In life, effort is your evidence. It is your fingerprint on your future. It is your witness that you showed up. Without it, your case falls apart. With it, your case builds itself. Effort is also contagious. People may not listen to your advice, but they will notice your effort. They may ignore your speeches, but they will feel the weight of your consistency. When you become the example of effort, you raise the standard for everyone around you. Children learn not from what parents tell them, but from what they see them do. Teams are inspired not by slogans on the wall, but by the effort of their leaders. Environments are shaped by the level of evidence people see in one another's actions. Effort is humbling, because no matter how much talent you have, effort equalizes the field. Talent is a gift, but effort is a choice. And when talent refuses to work, effort will always outrun it. The person who is willing to keep showing up, keep trying, keep adjusting, will always leave behind evidence of progress, while the talented but lazy will leave behind only potential. The world doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to try, to show up, to put in the effort. And over time, effort becomes your signature. It becomes the trail of proof that you lived intentionally, that you cared enough to act, that you valued enough to invest energy. Long after the words fade, the evidence of your effort remains. Discipline beats motivation. Motivation is like the wind. It comes, it goes, it changes direction, and it can never be trusted to stay. One day you wake up and feel inspired, ready to take on the world. The next day you wake up and feel heavy, tired, unwilling. If your success depends on how you feel when you wake up, then your success will always be unstable. Discipline is different. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. Discipline doesn't wait for permission. Discipline doesn't care if the conditions are ideal. Discipline is the decision that what you said yesterday still matters today, no matter what your mood is. Most people misunderstand motivation. They think it is the spark that starts everything. They think unless they feel motivated, they cannot begin. But the truth is reversed. It is action that produces motivation, not the other way around. When you take a step forward, you feel progress. When you see progress, you feel inspired to take the next step. Motivation is not the cause, it is the effect. Discipline is what starts the chain reaction. Without discipline, the first step never comes, and without the first step, motivation never arrives. Look at any great athlete, artist, or entrepreneur, and you'll see the same pattern. They don't always feel like practicing, creating, or building. They don't always wake up excited about their routines. But they do them anyway. They have learned to separate feeling from action. They understand that if they rely on emotions, they will be inconsistent, and inconsistency kills results. The key is that discipline creates consistency, and consistency compounds into excellence. Discipline is like a bridge. On one side, you have your goals, your dreams, your intentions. On the other side, you have the results, the reality, the life you want. Motivation tries to build the bridge only when the sun is shining. Discipline builds the bridge whether it rains, storms, or freezes. And once the bridge is finished, you can cross. Motivation won't get you across, only discipline will. There is a great illusion people fall into. They believe others who are successful must always be motivated. They imagine the author writing with a constant flood of inspiration, the athlete training with endless energy, the entrepreneur waking up each day with fiery passion. But if you ask them, they'll tell you the truth. Most of the time, they didn't feel like it. They didn't want to write, but they wrote. They didn't want to train, but they trained. They didn't want to make another call, but they did. The difference is not that they had more motivation. The difference is that they had more discipline. Discipline is a form of freedom. At first glance, it looks like restriction. Waking up early, following a routine, saying no to distractions. It feels like rules, like limits. But look closer. Discipline is what frees you from chaos. It frees you from the trap of your moods. It frees you from the endless cycle of starting and stopping, of waiting and delaying. With discipline, you move forward every day, no matter what, and that creates momentum. Momentum is freedom. Discipline is the path to that freedom. Motivation asks, do you feel like it? Discipline answers, it doesn't matter. Motivation is driven by moods. Discipline is driven by commitment, and commitment is what separates amateurs from professionals. The amateur does the work when it's convenient. The professional does the work because it's required. And that distinction determines who rises and who stalls. Think of discipline like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. At first, it's hard to say no to the easy option. It's hard to resist comfort. It's hard to get up when the alarm rings. But each time you practice discipline, you build strength. Just as lifting a weight breaks down muscle so it can grow back stronger, every act of discipline strengthens your ability to choose long-term benefit over short-term relief. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes automatic. Motivation burns bright and fast like a spark, but discipline burns steady like a flame. A spark can light a fire, but it cannot sustain it. A flame, tended with care, can heat a home, cook a meal, and endure through the night. Discipline is the steady flame that keeps progress alive long after motivation has burned out. One of the dangers of relying on motivation is that it tricks you into waiting. You wait until you feel ready. You wait until inspiration strikes. You wait until the timing seems perfect. And in all that waiting, life moves on. Time does not pause for you to feel motivated. The days pass whether you act or not. Discipline doesn't wait. Discipline moves, and because it moves, it wins. Discipline also protects you from regret. Everyone has experienced the feeling of saying, I'll do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes. Later, you look back and wish you had started sooner. That regret is the cost of depending on motivation. But when discipline rules your life, regret loses its grip. You don't have to look back with if only, because you know you showed up even when it wasn't easy. The truth is that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled with motivation. It is filled with ordinary, unglamorous, disciplined work. Reading the book when you'd rather watch TV, making the call when you'd rather scroll, writing the page when you'd rather rest. Each small act of discipline is a brick, and brick by brick you build the structure of your future. Motivation may help you place a few bricks, but discipline is what finishes the building. And here's the most surprising part. Discipline eventually creates motivation. When you discipline yourself to act consistently, you begin to see results. You feel stronger, sharper, more capable. Those results feed your confidence, and that confidence creates motivation. In this way, discipline doesn't just beat motivation, it produces it. But unlike fleeting emotions, this motivation has roots in evidence, in progress, in reality. Most people wait for motivation as if it were a bus they can ride. But discipline builds the road. Discipline builds the vehicle. Discipline drives. Motivation may come along for the ride, but it is never the driver. The driver is discipline, and it will take you further than motivation ever could. Ordinary creates extraordinary. It is one of the great paradoxes of life that the things which look small, repetitive, and insignificant are the very things that lead to greatness. People are often searching for that single moment, that breakthrough idea, that lucky chance that will suddenly catapult them to success. But when you peel back the curtain of every extraordinary achievement, what you find underneath is a long history of ordinary actions repeated over and over until they created something remarkable. Excellence is rarely built in giant leaps. It is built in small steps, invisible to most, sometimes boring, often uncelebrated. The musician who fills stadiums spent countless hours practicing scales alone in a room. The speaker who moves audiences to tears once stumbled over words in front of a mirror. The entrepreneur who built an empire spent endless nights sending emails, making calls, solving tiny problems that no one else noticed. The extraordinary is simply the ordinary done consistently, refined, and compounded over time. Ordinary is powerful because it is accessible. Anyone can do it. Anyone can read 10 pages a day, practice for an hour, save a little money, exercise for 30 minutes, show kindness, keep promises, and stay disciplined. None of those actions are glamorous. None of them bring instant applause. Yet, when repeated daily, they accumulate into a life others will one day call extraordinary. The difference is that most people dismiss the ordinary because it looks too simple, too plain, too unimpressive to matter. But those who respect the ordinary discover its hidden strength. Think about a drop of water. One drop does not shape stone, but drop after drop, day after day, year after year, even the hardest rock begins to wear away. The ordinary drop, repeated consistently, accomplishes what looks impossible. Human effort works the same way. You cannot see the difference after one workout, one study session, one sales call. But return day after day, and suddenly the person you were when you began no longer exists. You've been reshaped, redefined, and strengthened by the ordinary. People underestimate ordinary because it hides itself in routine. It feels too plain to be important. But extraordinary lives are not made from extraordinary moments alone. They are made from ordinary routines stacked on top of each other until they create greatness. The professional athlete doesn't win because of the one perfect play the crowd remembers. They win because of thousands of unseen drills that made the perfect play possible. The author doesn't publish a book because of one flash of inspiration. They publish because they wrote page after page, day after day, until inspiration had no choice but to arrive. Ordinary actions are like bricks. Each one looks unremarkable on its own. Hold one in your hand and you might wonder how it could matter. But put one brick on top of another, and then another, and soon you have a wall. Keep building and you have a house. Keep building still and you have a city. Extraordinary is not one giant brick. Extraordinary is thousands of ordinary bricks laid with patience and consistency. The danger of chasing the extraordinary without respecting the ordinary is that it leads to frustration and disappointment. People imagine that one bold move will change everything. They wait for the big opportunity, the sudden breakthrough, the overnight success. And when it doesn't come, they give up. But extraordinary does not appear overnight. It sneaks up slowly, disguising itself as repetition. By the time others notice it, years of ordinary work have already been invested. Ordinary also builds resilience. When you engage in simple daily disciplines, you train yourself to show up regardless of how you feel. That consistency strengthens your character, teaches you patience. It reminds you that progress is not always visible, but it is always happening beneath the surface. A farmer does not see crops the day he plants seeds, but he still waters them daily because he knows growth is happening invisibly. In the same way, ordinary effort builds invisible progress that one day reveals itself as extraordinary results. There's another truth about ordinary: it compounds. A single coin saved means little, but save one every day and over years it grows into wealth. A single act of kindness may seem small, but repeated daily, it transforms relationships and communities. A single page written doesn't make a book, but page after page eventually creates volumes. Ordinary actions are the currency of compounding. Each one might look small, but when multiplied by time, the result is beyond imagination. The extraordinary does not demand genius. It demands humility, the humility to respect small beginnings, to repeat simple actions, to endure boredom, and to stay consistent when applause is absent. It takes humility to say, this small step matters, when no one else notices. But those who master that humility find themselves achieving things others call miraculous, though in truth, it was never a miracle. It was ordinary multiplied by time, magnified by discipline, and crowned with persistence. Ordinary also carries honesty, because it cannot be faked for long. Anyone can give effort for a day or even a week when excitement is high. But ordinary actions, repeated for years, require a genuine decision. They reveal whether someone truly values their goals or merely wishes for them. If you want to know someone's future, don't ask them about their dreams. Watch their ordinary habits. The future hides in the ordinary. Consider how nature operates. The sun rises every day. The tide comes in and goes out every day. The seasons repeat their cycle year after year. Nature does not chase extraordinary. It obeys ordinary rhythms. Yet those rhythms create extraordinary life on Earth. If nature itself achieves greatness through repetition, why would humans be any different? Our ordinary patterns determine our extraordinary outcomes. The extraordinary is never built in public first. It is built in private when no one is watching. It is built in the quiet hours of early mornings, in the discipline of daily practice, in the ordinary choices no one applauds. Later, when the results are visible, people call it extraordinary. But those who lived it know the truth. It was ordinary, done faithfully until extraordinary became inevitable. Time is spent either way. Every day you wake up, you are given the same 24 hours as everyone else. Those hours will pass whether you use them intentionally or waste them carelessly. You cannot stop time, you cannot save time for later, and you cannot pause it while you think about your options. Time moves forward regardless of what you do. The question is never whether time will be spent. The question is only what you will spend it on. This truth is both sobering and liberating. Sobering because it means excuses have no power against the clock. Liberating because it means you already have what you need to build progress, time itself. The problem is not lack of time, but lack of direction. When people say they do not have time, what they really mean is that they are not prioritizing what they claim to value. Time is being spent anyway, but it is being spent on distractions, on delays, on things that do not move them forward. Look closely at how a single day unfolds. Someone wakes up and scrolls their phone for 30 minutes. Another person wakes up and spends that same 30 minutes studying a book. At the end of the day, both have spent 30 minutes. The cost was identical, but the returns are dramatically different. The first person has fragments of entertainment that vanish instantly. The second person has knowledge that compounds into skill. Time is spent either way, but the outcome depends entirely on the choice. Every hour has a hidden weight. What you put into it multiplies as days become weeks, weeks become months, and months become years. Spending an hour on health every day doesn't seem significant in the moment, but over a decade, it can mean the difference between energy and fatigue, strength and weakness. Spending an hour daily on learning doesn't seem urgent now, but over a decade, it separates mastery from mediocrity. The hours are going to be spent. The only real question is whether you want the return on investment to be growth or regret. The tragedy is not that people waste time. The tragedy is that they act as though wasted time is free. They forget that every wasted hour is paid for with a piece of their life they can never get back. Money can be lost and regained. Opportunities can close and reopen. But time moves in one direction only. Each day gone is gone forever, and yet people trade it for things that bring no return: endless distraction, idle complaining, empty arguments, passive entertainment. When the bill comes due, they realize too late that they spent what was most valuable on what mattered least. But time also offers fairness. Everyone receives the same daily allowance, regardless of background, talent, or circumstance. Some may start life with more wealth, more connections, or more opportunities. But no one starts with more than 24 hours a day. Time is the great equalizer. How you spend it is the great separator. The extraordinary do not have more time. They simply make different choices about how they spend it. The illusion people chase is that they can avoid the cost of effort by avoiding the work. But avoidance does not save time. It spends it in another direction. Refusing to start the project doesn't keep the hours in reserve. It simply spends them on avoidance, on procrastination, on worry. And at the end of the day, the hours are gone and the project remains undone. The irony is that doing the work would have spent the same hours but produced progress. Time is spent either way. One way leaves you further along, the other way leaves you standing still. Consider the difference between investment and expense. When you invest money, it grows and multiplies. When you waste money, it disappears. Time works the same way. An invested hour pays dividends in knowledge, skill, health, relationships, or progress. A wasted hour disappears with nothing in return. At the end of a week, the difference is small. At the end of a year, it becomes visible. At the end of a decade, it is the difference between a life built and a life drifted. This is why urgency matters. Not panic, not frantic rushing, but urgency, the recognition that time is finite and cannot be recovered. Urgency creates focus. Urgency eliminates trivial distractions. Urgency reminds you that if something matters, it must be given time now, not later. Later is an illusion. Later always becomes never. Time is spent whether you act or not, so the only way to make it count is to act while it is still in your hands. Think of time as a bank account where the balance decreases every day. You cannot see the exact number left, but you know it is shrinking. Some people spend as though the account is endless, throwing hours away on trivial things. Others treat each hour as a valuable coin, careful to spend it on what aligns with their goals. The balance drops for both, but one ends with a legacy and the other with regrets. Time also reveals values. What you spend your hours on shows what you truly care about, not what you claim to care about. You can say health is important, but if no time is spent on it, it is not. You can say family matters, but if no time is given to them, it does not. You can say success is your goal, but if time is spent on distractions, then comfort is your real goal. Words reveal intentions, but time reveals priorities. The challenge is that time often feels invisible. Because it passes no matter what, people become numb to it. They imagine they have endless tomorrows. They assume there will always be more chances. But the clock is not generous. The future will arrive whether you are prepared or not, whether you have invested or wasted. The ordinary passing of days does not feel urgent, but it carries the most urgent truth. Every choice of how you spend an hour shapes the life that hour creates. Small choices about time create enormous differences. Choosing to spend 30 minutes walking instead of sitting builds health. Choosing to spend 20 minutes journaling instead of scrolling builds clarity. Choosing to spend an hour working on a dream instead of watching television builds momentum. None of these choices feel life-changing in the moment, but stacked day after day, they create entirely different lives. And since time is going to be spent regardless, the cost of small, intentional choices is always worth paying. There is a quiet power in realizing that time moves whether you are ready or not. Instead of fearing it, you can embrace it. You don't need to create more time. You need to direct the time you already have. You don't need to wait for perfect conditions. You need to use imperfect hours productively. You don't need to chase speed. You need to respect consistency. When you realize that time is going to pass no matter what, you stop waiting and start building. Work transforms into reward. At first glance, work feels like sacrifice effort without immediate payoff, a cost you must pay before you see any return. It often feels like labor in the dark, hours given without recognition, energy poured into tasks that appear small and unimportant. Yet hidden within every act of work is the seed of reward. The transformation does not happen overnight, but over time, the effort you invest reshapes itself into growth, mastery, opportunity, and freedom. What begins as obligation evolves into benefit. What feels heavy eventually becomes the very thing that carries you forward. The early stages of work rarely feel rewarding. You lift weights in a gym, and at first all you feel is soreness. You practice a new skill, and at first all you feel is frustration. You save money, and at first the progress looks tiny compared to the sacrifice. But these early moments are deceptive. They convince many to quit too soon. They do not realize that work and reward live on different timelines. Work shows up first, demanding consistency, demanding patience. Reward arrives later, after the invisible accumulation of small efforts reaches a visible threshold. Those who persist discover that the same work that once felt like burden eventually becomes the very thing others admire. The process is much like planting a seed. The act of digging the soil, placing the seed, and watering daily feels like labor with no visible change. Weeks may pass before the sprout appears. During that time, it is easy to believe the work is wasted. Yet beneath the surface, transformation is taking place. Roots are forming, life is growing, progress is unfolding out of sight. Then one day the plant breaks through and eventually grows into fruit or shade. The farmer knows the work was not wasted, it simply took time to transform into reward. The same is true with every effort we make. Work transforms the worker long before it transforms the circumstances. In showing up daily, you build discipline. In facing challenges, you build resilience. In persisting through repetition, you build character. These are invisible rewards that arrive before external ones. They cannot be measured in dollars or applause, but they are far more valuable. They are what prepare you for the external rewards when they finally arrive. Without the internal growth, external success cannot be sustained. The money, the recognition, the opportunities will fall apart without the strength of character built by work. Another truth about work is that it compounds. A single act of effort may seem small, but repeated efforts accumulate until they transform into something greater than the sum of their parts. The student who studies 1 hour a day may not feel different after a week, but after a year their knowledge places them ahead. The musician who practices scales for 15 minutes daily may not see instant change, but after a decade they play with mastery. Work is rarely rewarded immediately, but when it is consistent, it always pays. Reward is not always direct. Sometimes the task you do today does not pay you in the same place you invested effort. You may work diligently at a job and later discover the reward is not in that company, but in the skills you gained that open another door. You may pour effort into a relationship that doesn't last, only to find the reward is in the wisdom and patience you carry into the next. Work never disappears without return. It may not return where you expect, but it always returns. Work also transforms into opportunities. Doors open for those who prepare before opportunities arrive. To the unprepared, opportunities are invisible or overwhelming. To the prepared, they are obvious and manageable. Work is preparation, and preparation is what makes opportunity visible and valuable. When people admire someone's lucky break, they rarely see the years of quiet preparation that allowed that person to seize the moment. The reward was not luck, it was work, transformed and revealed at the right time. There is a unique satisfaction that comes only from work. It is not the kind of pleasure you get from entertainment or relaxation. It is deeper, more lasting. It is the pride of knowing you earned something, the confidence that comes from proving to yourself you can endure and persist. This kind of reward cannot be given by others. It can only be created through work. And once you experience it, you begin to crave the process as much as the outcome. Work also transforms into freedom. At first, work feels like limitation. Time invested, energy spent, freedom reduced. But over time, the reward is the opposite. Financial work becomes financial independence. Physical work becomes health and vitality. Emotional work becomes peace of mind. Creative work becomes self-expression and influence. What begins as discipline ends as freedom. The short-term cost produces long-term reward. The transformation of work into reward requires faith. Not blind faith, but practical faith, the trust that consistent effort, even when unrewarded in the moment, always leads somewhere valuable. Most people abandon the process too soon because they cannot yet see the result. They dig up the seed before it has time to grow. They forget that the process is always at work beneath the surface. Faith allows you to continue when the reward is not yet visible. Work has another hidden reward. It builds momentum. Once you start and stay consistent, the process itself becomes easier. The habit forms, the resistance weakens, the small victories add up. What once felt heavy begins to feel natural. What once required discipline begins to feel automatic. At that stage, reward begins to flow not only from the results, but from the process itself. The work becomes part of who you are, and in that identity lies the deepest reward of all. The greatest transformations are often invisible to others. They may not notice the quiet hours you spend learning, training, creating. They may not applaud when the results are still small. But when the reward finally arrives, it will look sudden to them. They will call it talent, luck, or destiny. But you will know the truth. The reward was always hidden inside the work. It just needed time, patience, and consistency to reveal itself.